Hello, everyone. Welcome again to today's episode of Policy and Profits. I'm Anthony Esposito, founder, CEO of Ascalon 6 Capital, formerly Island Capital Investments. And I am here with EJ Antoni of the Heritage Foundation, economist extraordinaire. EJ, how are you today?
Anthony, I am hanging in, hey, winning at life, right? Isn't that the phrase we like to use around here?
Right? I like
winning
that.
At life.
Once in a while. You are winning at life, my friend. And I know you've had a little bit of a busy morning as usual, but we saw you out. Big announcement last night from a trade court, 3 judges in New York deciding that they were going to circumvent the executive power of our duly elected president and stop all tariffs as they've deemed them to be illegal. That'll likely be challenged and reversed, but the resistance continues. You commented on this morning on Varney. Let's take a look at that.
Court blocking President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. Economist EJ Antoni joins me. How do you read this decision? Is it really bad news for Trump, cutting his leverage in trade talks with other countries? How do you read it?
Stu, I don't think it's particularly bad for the administration for a couple of reasons. The first of which is the fact that this isn't even the same authority that the president used during his first term to implement tariffs. And so I think you're essentially going to see a reversion to those other mechanisms. But excuse me, the other thing is that I think this also opens up a lot of doors, right? The saying is when God closes a door, he opens another one, or he opens a window. We're in the middle of this reconciliation fight right now. This might be an opportunity to look at other mechanisms that can be put into statute as opposed to things that are just done through executive orders, something like a border adjustment tax, for example. So again, I think the administration has a lot of options here.
What should businesses do now? I mean, they've got a window of opportunity here, import like crazy, bring in as much stuff as they can. If they did that, wouldn't that cut the risk of inflation? Because if there's no shortages, you don't have inflation. Hey, this could be positive, couldn't it?
Well, Stu, in terms of what businesses should do here, I think they should really resist that urge to import everything like crazy in anticipation of more tariffs down the road. The reason being is that not only are we anticipating some trade deals to get hammered out, which will make the whole tariff discussion a moot point anyway, but on top of that, we're very likely going to see more and more exemptions, more and more carve-outs to these broad tariffs. For example, in the last international trade report, there was this massive surge in imports because people were trying to front-run tariffs, as you're discussing, except that immediately after that, there was a carve-out given for pharmaceuticals, and pharmaceuticals, along with pharmaceutical inputs, those precursor drugs or precursor chemicals, they were the biggest contributor to the surge in imports for the month. And so we don't want to be in this situation where we're stressing out supply chains and purchasing managers are pulling their hair out because they're trying to get in front of these tariffs, and then it turns out they didn't need to anyway.
Got it. Thanks, EJ. We'll see you again real soon. EJ Antoni.
So I'm going to say real quick, the courts, the constant harassment of this president and this administration are creating the manic, volatile reaction, not only in the streets and the day-to-day, but in the markets and investors and businesses. I mean, let the administration do what he was elected to do and what his administration is doing. Let the president be the president of the United States. That's what I hear and what I see. As far as the interview, EJ, I mean, you have a clear cut view of how this plays out. Just reiterate again, how does this play out?
I think the administration is going to get their way one way or another. He has at least 3 other statutes that he can utilize besides IEPA, which is the 1977 law that the court just ruled yesterday, saying no, Trump can't use that for this instance. And frankly, IEPA was probably the weakest of the 4 that he could have chosen. I don't understand why they deviated from the previous formula that Lighthizer had laid out for them in the first term, and which was so successful. The courts never said boo about that because they simply couldn't. It was a pretty airtight case. IEPA was kind of always a stretch. So again, I'm not sure why guys like Peter Navarro advocated for it, but whatever the case may be, he clearly has at least 3 other options that he can pursue, at least 3 other statutes that will allow him to implement these tariffs. And then you also have the option of putting some of these things into statute. And I think the reconciliation fight is a good time to do it. Yeah, I didn't really have time to get into it in that interview, but with the reconciliation process, you have the ability to, whenever you want to cut taxes, essentially, and you need a pay for, you can raise taxes elsewhere. So you can raise taxes on imports through something like a border adjustment tax, which works kind of like a cross between a tariff and a value-added tax. So you're going to increase taxes there, get more government revenue, which you can now count in the reconciliation process as a pay for reducing marginal tax rates or giving some other kind of tax reduction to Americans. That would be a great thing, because unfortunately, even though we've already seen tariff revenue go up, we're not able to count that in the reconciliation process when it comes to trying to hammer out this tax bill. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe this court ruling is actually a bit of a blessing in disguise if we can get Congress to act.
All right, interesting. We're going to put a pin in that for the profit side of the conversation, because we're going to go through what the futures did and are doing after that hit last night. Real quick, GDP we went through extensively 2 to 3 episodes ago, but let's talk about GDP. The numbers came out today basically in line with what we had seen before, negative 0.2%. That number really hinged upon investment, which was good, and a surge in imports, which was a drawdown on the number. But basically what we saw last time, is that right?
Yeah, exactly, Anthony. And as we discussed previously, this huge surge in imports should show up elsewhere in GDP, either on the investment side or the consumption side. Because if in consumer spending, let's say we buy something from abroad, maybe it's a refrigerator, whatever the case may be, right? Mm-hmm. That counts as a negative in terms of imports, but it counts as a positive in terms of consumer spending, because GDP, GDI, these are trying to measure production here at home. So just because something is consumed at home doesn't mean it was produced at home. If it was produced abroad, we want to take that out. We want to zero it out, essentially, which is why you add it in one category and you subtract it in another. The problem comes into when we have surges like we had in the first quarter, where there is such a large increase in imports that the imports all show up at once, but we don't actually account for them on the consumption or investment side right away. That's a big reason why we saw investment was higher in this second estimate, because we are now better able to account for where all of those imports went. In this case, a lot of it went to businesses building up their inventories, again, trying to front run tariffs, but also buying more equipment from abroad, trying to get that in before the tariffs hit as well. So at the end of the day, it may take the third estimate. It may take another quarter or two before we see all of those imports accounted for elsewhere in the GDP numbers. But to your point, no big surprises here. It was not a big change. These were relatively minor adjustments.
Okay. All right, cool. And that all makes perfect sense, and definitely behind the numbers as far as what the lag is in these numbers, like consumer spending and consumption, when that shows up is important to note. As we shift to profits now, the one thing that I've said and I continue to say is you need to understand as an investor what regime we're in. And you can look at regime in a couple of different ways, and I look at it as high vol or low vol, vol being volatility. Or you could look at it as a bear regime or a bull regime. This is a picture of the VIX term structure. So these are the VIX curves from today or yesterday, a week ago, a month ago. And what you can see is that white bottom line is the VIX as it should be in a calming market where volatility is low, it's downward sloping or upward sloping, bottom left to upper right. But the term structure, meaning spot VIX, which is the dot on each of these lines, furthest to the left, is actually lower than on the white line, first month, second month, third month. So those months of VIX futures, volatility futures, are actually rolling downward to a lower current volatility number, long and short. If you look at that amber line, that's where we were a month ago. You can see a massively elevated VIX, and you can see front month, second month, third month VIX futures actually rolling up to the expectation of higher volatility in the coming 30 days, which is the VIX's mark. What we want to note is that the VIX is still around 20. And for all intents and purposes, I want everyone, the whole purpose of looking at this term structure, and it's more complicated than that rundown, but still a good rundown. You want to understand that we are still in an elevated, higher vol regime. With that, don't treat market rallies, don't treat market action as if we're in a low vol bull regime. We are not. Don't believe Kramer and let him throw all the stuffed animals he wants at the screen, and don't believe the talking heads. And CNBC is sitting right in the middle of the main room, right where Post 10 used to be. I traded there for a very long time. It's now a TV studio, and they think because there's some beeping from the BBSS machines in the background and handhelds, and there's one or two brokers walking around, that they have a beat. They don't. They might be inside of that blue line, but they don't have the inside track. We are not in a low vol bull regime. Don't treat it as such. Be very careful here. You can see we were higher vol, and we did have the curve go from contango, which is that first white sloping curve where you want to be a buyer and you're confident that volatility will be low, to backwardation very quickly and aggressively where you don't want to be a buyer and volatility is expected to be very high. This is the world we live in, and be aware of it. Back to what we pinned earlier about the tariffs, we had a move in the futures last night, which has capped off a ridiculous rally from down really around the 4,800 level, right off of the 4,800 level, which, by the way, was a downside target and support level for us from back up at 6,000 and 5,500. That rally occurred from 4,800 to the high, today's trading session high, but it was last night after the 6 o'clock reopen for today. That was a 24% rally. I'll say it again. That was a 24% rally from the low on April 7th. Okay, so that was coming out of Liberation Day. We gap down, hold 4,800. We're now up at over 24%. The rally held at 6,000, meaning we hit resistance at 6,000 last night. We've now faded to 59.13. We were below 5,900 today. I'm seeing my model really dying to shift negative. It's held neutral for a while here. I think we're on day 8 of neutral. Mm-hmm. Day 8 will bring us back almost to where it was testing 6,000 about 7 days ago. That was on May 19th, May 16th, 19th, and May 20th. So we started to hit neutral as we tested 6,000. We've now dipped, come back up to 6,000 off of this tariff ruling, and now dipping again. But I'm not seeing a shift to positive in the model. Again, treat this as though we're in a bear regime and a higher vol regime. Be ready for lower prices. Be ready for higher vol. That's just where we are. It's a high vol regime. It's a bear regime. This rally was wonderful. It was great. And a lot more fixing, a lot more repair has been done technically than I expected at this point. But we are not out of the woods. Don't think that we are. The last thing I'll say is the retail buying has been excessive. For the first time, or for the widest spread in history, we're seeing retail buying versus institutional buying. That is not a good sign. It has never been recorded in history of financial markets where the retail investor was ahead of, smarter than, or first in versus the institutional investor. And the spreads are getting worse and worse. So we're at 6,000. We've rallied 24% from the bottom. My advice to anyone trading, or especially as a retail investor, if you are long, if you got long, if you think we're going to new highs, I would really warn you against believing that. And these are probably, looking back, these will be very good exits for any longs that you accumulated along the way up on this rally. Be very careful here, because this market is definitely still in a bear regime and a high vol regime, and I do believe that will return.
And Anthony, that makes so much sense. In light of the fact that, again, the administration has so many different options when it comes to trying to re-implement these tariffs. And if what happened on April 2nd is any indication, as soon as these tariffs go right back on, all of the gains of the last 24, not even 24 hours, right? I mean, what happens to them?
We've returned all the gains already. So to your point, that's the point. Like we had a rally to 6,000. It was a 60 handle rally at the end of a 24% rally, but we've already returned those gains. So yeah, to your point, what happens when Trump comes out and he has another tactic, which he does, or another avenue, which he does? And by the way, the ruling last night I believe 100%, was not just a coincidence with the taco, jargon that was taco. Trump always chickens out. They're attacking him personally because they think they're going to rile him up. They're attacking him on his policies in the administration. What they don't get is they will lose like they always lose because he is in the right. He is on the right path here, and he is doing what the American people have elected him to do within his rights, and they're not. So I think the taco topped with the court ruling last night was a coordinated effort, and I think that coordinated effort will be unwound, as you said. And when that's unwound, this will truly be the quintessential Wall Street, quote unquote, sell the news event. This was a sell the news event. If you can get out, I would be getting out at a minimum lightning up here. Exactly.
So at the end of the day, then, I know you had said the model, you're still in neutral, right?
We're in neutral, but curiously enough, even with the rally today, we are probably going to shift to negative tonight on the S&P model.
Gotcha. So, good to know. So even after all the upward moves that we've seen, it still is not enough to shift things positive. That's amazing.
No, and I've been writing about it. We're seeing negative divergence between the internals momentum trend that I look at and price. That negative divergence means that the price move higher is not being confirmed with momentum and trend indicators. Now, my model is a combination of all of multiple momentum trend indicators. And then what I do is I look at them individually relative to each other and then relative to price. And I come out with a score. And that score gives me either positive, neutral, or negative. That, in a nutshell, is what I do. Because of the fact that the internals have not been supporting price, we've been stuck in neutral. Fair enough. But even with the move up today, the model is poised as of right now, and I'll mark it on the close, but poised right now to be negative, which would be a pretty aggressive shift considering we're at, up 24% from the low so far for this bear move.
Fascinating stuff, my man. Absolutely fascinating, truly.
Well, thank you. Away from fascinating, we have quite a few how dumb is today. I'm kind of making up for lost time. So let's dive into the how dumb is segment of the show because there is plenty of dumb to go around. And as an old friend of mine used to say, you can't fix stupid. And that is very true.
It's time to stretch. It is 8 a.m. and I haven't had coffee yet, so I feel not as zingy. I've just been really moving and shaking the past week and not stretching enough, and I could feel it in my body. So let's get into it. I just need to rip some sun salutations real quick.
Just think, she almost had clearance to be an essential resident of the White House. I'm just saying.
I'm just gonna ragdoll and swing back and forth. That's really good to open
8 a.m. I just got up at 8 a.m. and I'm so tired. I can't believe it.
Look at that. I mean, I don't know what. I just.
Wow, I feel a lot better and ready to start the day. I hope everyone has a good week. It's my birthday week. My birthday's on Thursday, so last stretches as a 25-year-old.
When was the last time you slept to 8 a.m.?
Oh my God. She sleeps more in a night than I sleep in a week, but first of all. And saying, well, I'm not criticizing anybody for any other reason than just being dumb. That's just dumb. That entire video is scary to me that she could possibly have been in the position with the influence or the knowledge that she potentially could have had. It's really scary. It's scary.
Exactly.
I don't know that our founding fathers ever imagined a young woman like that living or walking the halls of the White House. Anyway, or stretching in the halls of the White House at 8 a.m. I don't know.
So what do you say to the Trump administration and those who argue that by simply being here, you're breaking the law?
My family and I were aware that we broke the law by being here without the proper documentation, but I think we tried to take the steps to do so, and the system didn't really allow us to. So I would just tell them to be a little bit understanding, be a little bit compassionate towards people in my situation who truly don't have a criminal record, who are working, who are a great example of what a citizen should look like. They should give us an opportunity and find a way for us to be able to be here legally.
Oh, there is a way for you to be here legally. You go through the legal process. I mean,
right.
like, she literally admits we broke the law, but then says, but we're not criminals. We just broke the law. But that doesn't make us law breakers. The cognitive dissonance.
It is insane to me. We broke the law. We've essentially stolen from the American taxpayer and citizen by claiming the benefits, the health care, the education, the food support, whatever, the rent, whatever you've taken. You're here illegally, but now maybe there's a way we can just you can just let us stay. Okay, so if somebody breaks into my home and decides they're going to live in my living room and then says, hey, I know I broke in, I got a gun to your head, but is there any way we can work this out? Like, you're cool with this, right? I should be like, yes, I feel bad for you. You can stay. Can I make you some eggs in the morning?
Have some compassion, Anthony.
That's right.
Come on.
That's right. Can I pour you a drink? Are you okay? Okay.
How can I make you more comfortable?
I thought that it was important that, especially in criminal cases, where when you have people that on one side of the bench, they can look at the judge and say, wow, she looks like me, then maybe I have a better shot.
So if the judge looks like me, I have a better shot at getting away with the crime I committed. This is equal justice? This is what we're saying?
This is the whole reason Lady Justice wears a blindfold. It's for exactly this type of nonsense. And this is coming from somebody who has helped her own family members essentially subvert the justice system and get out from doing time. I mean, it's absolutely appalling. And it is quintessentially stupid. This is someone who is supposed to be part of the legal system, part of that Lady Justice wearing a blindfold, and instead is like hyper focused with binoculars on nothing but race.
That's it. They need medication, to be honest with you. There's no fixing stupid. So that's our three how dumb is, how dumb are for the day. I don't really have words for that last judge, except that she should resign immediately. EJ, high vol, bear regime, be aware. Great analysis by you, my friend, on that tariff court ruling and the GDP, and I'm curious to see how GDP pans out in the coming quarters for sure.
Well, great discussion on the technicals, Anthony. I won't keep you any longer. I know you got to get going, but awesome conversation as always. Look forward to next week.
Thank you, buddy.